Welcome along to our big GCN preview of the Vuelta a España, which this year marks the final Grand Tour of the year, as it has done in fact for the past few years. However, it's about 2 months later than originally planned. It starts this coming Tuesday, the 20th of October.
In case you're wondering why the race starts on a Tuesday, well, it's the only Grand Tour to have been shortened down to 18 stages from the usual 21, missing out the planned start in the Netherlands for understandable reasons. However, that won't make the race any less a spectacle because there is a whole heap of climbing in this year's edition.
Yes, there is. So coming up, we will be looking at where the route is heading this year, and as Conor said, there are a bucket load of summit finishes. We'll also take a look at the roster of riders taking part in the race and of course speculate as to who we think might win when the race reaches its conclusion. Just before we get onto the route, we wanted to let you know we are very proud to be able to bring you live coverage of the Vuelta on Race Pass. That's if you're in the right territories, they being Europe or the Asia Pacific, excluding China, Japan and New Zealand. If you're in those three countries, or indeed any others outside of our live coverage, you can watch short form highlights and indeed our post-race analysis show every single day called The Breakaway.
So the 2020 Vuelta kicks things off in the Basque region of Spain. In fact, the race doesn't head much further south than Madrid, staying in the far northwest of the country for most of the race. Now, it will conclude in Madrid if it actually does finish there. It's still hanging in the balance a bit, but it's going to be a spectacular route in this region of the country.
It will be, yeah, and we're going to go through it in detail now. It is tough, to say the very least. So of the 18 stages this year, only 4 are flat. There's also 1 individual time trial, 8 hilly days and 5 stages in the high mountains. So in total, across those hilly and mountainous stages, we have 8 summit finishes. So something to look forward to almost every single day from that respect. In total, the route is just under 2,900 kilometres long, which is of course significantly shorter than the other 2 Grand Tours this year. But then again, it is 3 days shorter.
Irún is the start town of this year's Vuelta, and the Gran Salida will take place on the border between Spain and France. Now, it's not going to be an easy stage. It's actually across 173 kilometres with 4 categorised climbs. The final climb, Alto de Rate, tops out with 3k to go until the finish, which is going to leave the race hanging in the balance from the off.
It will, yeah. Alto de Arrate. Yeah, you can score our pronunciations throughout this Vuelta preview. So we should get GC fireworks on day 1, shouldn't we? Which doesn't always happen in a Grand Tour, rarely does, in fact. And it doesn't let up from there either. Stage 2 is pretty tough as well. That one being 151 kilometres, starting in the capital of Navarra, which is Pamplona, and finishing in Lekenberry. With that one, there is a 10-kilometre climb, which averages 7.8% near the end on rough concrete roads, after which they have a 17-kilometre descent down to the finish line.
The race meanders south from the Gran Salida, venturing into the Castile y León region of Spain for stage 3, and it will come with a summit finish again, finishing with a 17-kilometre, 3.6% climb to Laguna Negra, a first inclusion at the Vuelta actually, and it will be a picturesque finish. Laguna Negra is an ancient glacial lake in the Urbil Mountains National Park, so I'm sure the peloton will appreciate the view.
Or at least we will, particularly if it's a nice day to watch on TV, isn't it? Anyway, from there, stage 4 takes the riders towards the Pyrenees, but that is actually a flat stage and one that looks almost certain to finish in a bunch sprint. But stage 5, well, that gets hilly again, finishing in Santiago. Again, rate my pronunciation. Anyway, that one looks like one for the breakaway because it's not hard enough for the GC riders to make a difference, but too tough for a sprint.
Following on from that, we have stage 6, which is going to be a truly epic day actually. It's going to feature 3 epic climbs, including the Col de Portelet, Col de Obisque, and then finally the infamous Col de Tourmalet. It's going to be a tantalising prospect so soon in the race, and we'll see the GC favourites really put to the test.
Well, we will do if it doesn't get cancelled due to snow or any other 2020 fiasco, so fingers crossed for that. It is a brutal day, albeit relatively short at 135 kilometres, but within that distance they have to climb 4,500 metres. It's just not a metre of flat really, is it? Including at the start, it goes up right from the gun, which is almost my worst nightmare. Yours?
Yeah, I still have dreams about it.
You used to hate those. Anyway, it also comes just before the first rest day, which, if anything, will probably prompt even more attacking riding from the GC players.
The second week sees the race head east towards the region of Asturias and a brutal summit finish on the Alto de Angliru, one of the hardest climbs in cycling, one which I've actually kind of blanked from my memory a bit.
Oh, I'm not surprised, but I will reinsert it in your memory with some, well, very detailed stats a bit later on. And for the rest of you, of course, as well. Anyway, stage 7 is the resumption of racing after the first rest day. It's not an easy one by any means. There are 2 first category climbs, the last of which is the Puerto de Orduna. That comes with 20 kilometres to go, 8Ks at 8%, so it should be somewhere people can launch some attacks. Then it's a fast 20 kilometres descent down to the finish line in Valdegovia.
Stage 8 sees another of those 8 summit finishes with an 11-kilometre climb at 9% to Alto de Moncavillo. However, the road does ramp in the final 3 kilometres with gradients of 13 to 14%. This will be a key GC day in that dramatic build-up to the final showdown at the end of this second week.
After that, somewhat unbelievably, they have a little bit of respite. Stages 9 and 10 actually look relatively easy and as though they should finish in bunch sprints. And that is what they will be hoping for, because those 2 stages precede what we think are the 2 hardest stages in this year's race.
And those 2 stages are kicked off on stage 11, where the peloton will again see a summit finish with a 16.5-kilometre climb with an average gradient of 6.5% to Alto de Fapona. However, again, the stats do lie somewhat, as the final 6.5 kilometres are 9.6%. A brutal mountain pass on the border between Asturias and Castile y León.
And it goes without saying that that is not the only climb of that day, is it? In fact, there are 3 further first category climbs which precede it, and before all of them, there's a 3rd category climb which will greet the riders right from the gun. And we don't even think that's the hardest stage. We think that the following day is the Queen stage of the race, finishing as it does up the Alto de l'Angliru.
We are all familiar with the Angliru by now, an absolutely vicious climb with gradients of up to 23.5%. It's 12.5 kilometres long, but it feels like twice that with the crazy gradients. It's an absolutely brutal mountain finish. And if anyone has designs on keeping the Mayo Rojo until Madrid, well, this will be a key day.
I don't think I've ever ridden the Angliru. Quite thankful about that.
I have done.
You've had nightmares about it ever since, haven't you?
Yeah.
As ever though, the Angliru on that day will not be the only climb, of course. There are 4 categorised climbs which precede it. And it's the general nature of this year's Vuelta a España actually, is that there's a lot of climbing on a lot of stages, but they are all actually quite short. That one's only 109 kilometres. So in stark contrast really to the plethora of 200k plus stages we're seeing at this year's Giro.
After a welcome second rest day in A Coruña, the peloton tackles the 3rd week, and to kick things off, they will see a 33.7-kilometre TT starting in Muros. TT specialists will be grateful, but they won't be grateful when they look at the profile.
No, because of course it finishes on a stonking wall, 1.8 kilometres long, so just over a mile, with an average gradient of just under 15%. So that will no doubt spark the debate as to whether or not riders will choose to change from their time trial bikes to their road bikes. I'm going to say not over that distance, but we'll wait and see. Anyway, regardless, it's going to be another spectacular stage for us to watch, at least from a scenery point of view, because much of it traces the beautiful Galician coastline in northwestern Spain.
The final 5 stages of the race begin to head south towards Madrid, with stages 14 and 15 looking like they'll be sprint days. However, this will depend on who is left in the race and who is likely to control the race. Stage 16, however, looks like a prime breakaway day with 2 categorised climbs between Ciudad Rodrigo and Salamanca where the stage starts. Now they will head through the rather beautiful Las Patucas Sierra de Franca National Park.
Wow, 4 out of 10 in rehearsals, that was a 9 out of 10 I reckon.
There you go, Dan.
Anyway, the last opportunity for the GC riders comes on the penultimate day, which is of course stage 17 this year. That one finishes on the Alto de Covatia. That one is just a little under 10 kilometres long, but a little over 7% average gradient. But there's loads of climbing yet again before they even get there. 5 categorised climbs to be precise, including the Alto de Portillo de las Buetecas. I'll give myself a 5 out of 10 for that one. Either way, it's a brutal day in the saddle and quite a long one, as I said, so it's definitely one where we could see a final surprise on the GC.
Finally, the race concludes in Madrid with the now famous city centre circuit, which will definitely be a sprint depending on who is left really. However, as we have seen in the Giro and the cancellation of Paris-Roubaix, Madrid still is a little bit uncertain. It is currently a hotspot of coronavirus, so we will wait and see if that is the destination of the Vuelta a España this year.
Yeah, hopefully it'll take place because, of course, the Madrid challenge for the women's race is there as well. So we shall wait and see. So, we've told you all about the 3-week route, or 18 days at least, but what about the riders competing over it? Well, here they are.
Well, perhaps the favourite to take the Vuelta win has got to be Primož Roglič. Bouncing back from his second place finish at the Tour, he'll be doubling up at the Vuelta and definitely looking to make amends from when victory was kind of snatched from the last. Tom Dumoulin will be there with him, and he has been increasing in form since his crash at the Giro last year. Joining them will be Sepp Kuss. Lotto Jumbo just have such strength in numbers, don't they? I guess it'll be interesting to see if Sepp Kuss does get some more freedom at the Vuelta.
No Wout van Aert though to win the overall, the points, 10 stages, etc, etc. I hope Sepp Kuss, like I said, does get some freedom here, although not sure given his teammates on the start line again. We shall wait and see. The race, as ever, also marks an opportunity for a few riders who had a disappointing Tour de France. I guess you could count Primož Roglič amongst them, as you kind of said. But I'm thinking more of Thibaut Pinot, who rides, of course, for Groupama FDJ and was hugely disappointed with the way his Tour de France turned out. Guillaume Martin, well, slightly less disappointed, but he looked better in the first half than the second half of the Tour, didn't he, where he sort of trailed outside the top 10.
Enrique Mas and Alejandro Valverde will be taking part in their home Grand Tour for Movistar. Now, Valverde will be taking part in his 14th appearance at the Vuelta, and there's some pretty crazy stats actually from his participations in the race. He's featured in the top 10 on GC 11 times. He's won 12 stages. It's his 14th appearance. I mean, there are some touted 20-year-olds looking to participate in this year's Vuelta. So when Valverde first started the Grand Tour way back, some of those riders would have been 2 years old.
I know, it's bizarre, isn't it, really? I kind of hope it carries on another couple of years, that there's someone competing at the race that wasn't born when he first participated there. Anyway, other Spanish hopefuls, albeit outsiders, are David de la Cruz and Jon Izagirre. But I think the most intriguing rider in this lineup this year is Chris Froome of Team Ineos Grenadiers. It's actually been over 2 years since he started a Grand Tour because, of course, that crash at the Dauphiné last year ruled him out of any Grand Tour last year. So very interesting to see how he gets on. From my personal point of view, I am not expecting him to trouble the top 10.
Oh, okay, Dan.
A glass of water there, I felt a bit lightheaded.
And Ineos have been riding an attacking style we haven't seen in previous years. However, their GC hopes did fade at the Tour de France when Bernal dropped out, and it was the same story at the Giro d'Italia when Thomas crashed out early. So their chances of getting a GC win are fading.
They are. One chance left for them to take a win, and actually if they don't win a Grand Tour this year, it'll be the first time that's happened since 2014 when Chris Froome crashed out of the Tour de France, of course. I think the man to do that for them, though, would be Richard Carapaz, last year's Giro d'Italia winner. He is on their lineup and looked great towards the end of the Tour de France, didn't he? So I think he's got a very good chance here.
Others to look out for include Dan Martin of Israel's Startup Nation, Emmanuel Bookman of Bora Hansgrohe, and also Wout Poels of Bahrain Merida, who fractured a rib at the Tour de France but still managed to show himself so well. So if he has recovered, he could go well on such a mountainous route.
We've also got quite a few teams who, as we record this, have not confirmed their 8-man lineups for the race. But we're wondering about the likes of Alexander Vlasov. He looked brilliant on the way into the Giro, but had to pull out after a couple of days due to sickness. Adam Yates, potentially. We've not heard much about whether he'll do it or not, but he might be there on the start line. We shall wait and see. But we'll move on to the sprinters now. I think they pretty much looked at the route and said, no thank you, I will stay at home or do the Tour of Flanders, which actually is a couple of days before the start. But nevertheless, we do have a few that will be on the start line, but they'll still probably take a gulp every time they look at the following day's stage.
And when the race does hit those relatively flat stages, the hot favourite amongst the sprinters has got to be Sam Bennett.
Yep, green jersey winner at the Tour de France, along with those 2 stage wins, of course. He'll be in his normal trade team kit now, though, won't he? Because he missed out on the Irish Championships, i.e. he didn't compete there. Anyway, also brings along a formidable lead-out train, including Michael Murko, who was incredible at the Tour de France for him, as well as Shane Archibald, the Kiwi.
And perhaps his main rival at the Vuelta will be Pascal Ackermann of Bora. The German sprint has been riding strongly since the season restart, taking 4 wins. Who remembers that opening stage win at Torino where that final lunge to the line just saw him take victory?
Yes. Beyond those two, we can also look to the likes of Jasper Phillips and the young Belgian of UAE Team Emirates, who first came on my radar, I think, back at the Tour of California when, of course, he was even younger. I think he might have been a teenager back then. But I distinctly remember that coming in the last few hundred metres, he had the confidence, even at that age, to shoulder barge Fernando Gaviria off the wheel, who was the biggest name in sprinting at that particular race. So he's obviously full of confidence. Did you ever race with him?
Yeah, I did, Dan, and we kind of used to call him Pinball. He did seem to kind of bounce off riders a bit.
Even in the earlier stages of the race, did he?
Yeah. I think once when I was kind of having a bar. That I was a bit grumpy about. Anyway, moving on. Jakub Mareczko for CCC will be another sprinter to feature. However, it's kind of questionable whether he'll manage to get through this Vuelta route. It is very mountainous, and Mareczko is kind of more suited to those pan-flat stages.
He's not noted for his climbing ability, Jakub Mareczko, is he?
No.
We should wait and see. Still yet to get a huge win in Europe, I think, isn't he? Despite the number of wins he's got elsewhere. Anyway, those are the only main sprinters that we've seen confirmed for the Vuelta this year, but we'll move on to some breakaway riders because, of course, this is a race which is known for giving plenty of opportunities to them. We've got the likes of Ben Hermans of the Israel Startup Nation, Tim Welland of Lotto Soudal, if he's here, even Andre Amador, if Team Ineos yet again have some problems in the general classification, he might be given a chance. But the man I'm most looking forward to seeing go up the road is Matej Mohoric of Bahrain McLaren. I just love watching him race, and particularly I love watching the way that he descends, so watch out for him on any stages which finish at the end of a descent. Plus, of course, he's Slovenian, which gives you licence to be bloody good at cycling these days, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. I mean, Slovenian clubs doing pretty well these days. But anyway, on to our predictions, Dan. Who are you going for?
Oh, right. Well, yeah, I guess we have been through all of the route and the riders. OK, I am going to go for... I'm going to go for Tom Dumoulin. Yeah, I mean, I know Roglic is here, even Sepp Kuss, but I just think Tom would have got through the Tour de France slightly less mentally fatigued because he wasn't the leader, perhaps slightly less physically fatigued as well. I think also, given he hasn't raced that much over the last couple of years, he could be relatively fresh compared to the others. So I'm going for Tom.
Okay,
how about yourself?
Yeah, good call. I think I'm going to go for Richard Carapaz because he looked to be kind of settling in well at Ineos in the Tour de France. He kind of found his feet a bit and he's attacking so well, riding so strongly, and such a mountainous route at the Vuelta this year, and I think it'll really suit him. So I'm going for Carapaz.
I'm starting to think Carapaz is the right one to go for, actually. Anyway, let us know who you think will win the Vuelta a España. Now, though, we're going to hear the thoughts of some of our other colleagues.
Hi guys, for Vuelta España, I want to say Richard Carapaz.
My Vuelta a España favourites for the GC victory are following riders: Richard Carapaz, Primož Roglic, and then of course from a German view, Emanuel Buchmann from Team Bora Hansgrohe. So best of luck, Emo.
For the Ronde, I say Wout van Aert. He can really win his second monument this season.
Right, that draws to a close our big Vuelta preview for 2020. Thanks very much for watching. We hope you now know everything that you need to about the route and the riders taking part. Keep your eye out for the finishing start list, though, which should be confirmed very soon indeed. I enjoyed that, Conor. Thanks very much indeed.
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, it's going to be great to watch it.
It will be. Yeah, and as we can remind you now, you are able to watch it if you're in Europe or the Asia Pacific outside of Japan, New Zealand or China, live on Race Pass. But if not, make sure you check out the Breakaway each evening.